On the morning of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic's passengers woke up to the calmest seas the crew had ever seen. The sun was out. The ocean was flat like glass. First-class passengers played cards, strolled the promenade deck, and sat down to 10-course dinners with champagne. In the boiler rooms, workers shoveled coal into furnaces to keep the ship running at near top speed. The wireless operators received 7 iceberg warnings that day. 7. The captain acknowledged most of them. Then he attended a dinner party thrown in his honor. By midnight, the ship's designer was standing in the flooding mailroom, doing math in his head, and realizing the answer meant everyone on board was going to die. This is the story of the last 24 hours aboard the most famous ship in history, and the chain of small decisions that sealed the fate of over 1,500 people. April 14th, 1912, was a Sunday. The Titanic was 4 days into her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York, carrying over 2,200 passengers and crew. She was the largest moving object ever built by human hands. That morning, the ship's 60 cooks were already at work before dawn. The bakery turned out over 1,000 loaves of bread. The galley prepared more than 6,000 meals across 3 classes. First-class passengers sat down to breakfasts of gigantic proportions: grilled mutton kidneys, eggs, fresh fruit, Oxford marmalade, and French pastries. Third-class passengers, many of them immigrants heading to a new life in America, ate oatmeal porridge, smoked herrings, ham and eggs, and fresh bread with butter. For many of them, this was better food than they'd ever had at home. At 10:30 that morning, Captain Edward Smith, the most senior captain in the White Star Line fleet, a 62-year-old veteran with over 40 years at sea, held a religious service in the first-class dining saloon. This was supposed to be his final voyage before retirement. By noon, the crew posted the day's run: 546 miles covered since the previous day. Passengers were impressed. The ship was making excellent time. Some placed bets on when they would arrive in New York. It was a calm, beautiful, ordinary day. The kind of day where nothing could possibly go wrong. 9 a.m. The first ice warning of the day arrives. The Coronia reports icebergs and field ice between latitudes 42 degrees north and 51 degrees west, directly in the Titanic's path. Captain Smith acknowledges the message. 11:40 a.m., a second warning. The NORDAM reports ice in the same general area. Smith is made aware. 11:45 a.m. The German steamer America sends a message reporting 2 large icebergs. But this message is addressed to the Hydrographic Office in Washington, routed through the Titanic for relay to shore. It's unclear whether anyone on the bridge ever reads it. 1:42 p.m. The Baltic sends an ice warning directly to the Titanic. Captain Smith receives it. Then something strange happens. That afternoon, Smith is walking the promenade deck when he encounters J. Bruce Ismay, the managing director of the White Star Line, the man who owns the ship. Without comment, Smith hands Ismay the Baltic's ice warning. Ismay reads it, puts it in his pocket, and walks away. He won't return the message to the bridge for hours. 7 p.m. In the first-class dining saloon, the evening meal begins. Dinner for first-class passengers that night starts with raw oysters and consommé Olga, a veal stock soup flavored with sturgeon marrow, then poached Atlantic salmon, then filet mignon, roast duckling, lamb with mint sauce, Waldorf pudding, French ice cream, 10 courses in total, each with a different wine. In the a la carte restaurant, the most exclusive dining room on the ship, George and Eleanor Widener, one of the wealthiest families in Philadelphia, are hosting a dinner party in honor of Captain Smith. Among the guests, John and Marion Thayer, Major Archibald Butt, the military aide to President Taft, and William and Lucille Carter. Crystal lamps glow against satinwood paneling. The ship's orchestra plays Puccini in the corridor outside. Captain Smith drank no wine at dinner. He smoked 2 cigars. A little before 9 p.m., he excused himself and headed for the bridge. 9 p.m. On the bridge, Smith finds Second Officer Charles Lightoller keeping watch. They talk about the cold. The air temperature has dropped sharply. Smith tells Lightoller to alert him immediately if conditions become at all doubtful. Then he retires to his cabin. 9:20 p.m. Captain Smith goes to bed. This is the warning that matters. The ice field the Mesaba is describing is exactly where the Titanic is heading. If this message reaches the bridge, the ship slows down. Maybe it stops. Maybe 1,500 people go home to their families. But it never leaves the wireless room. 10 p.m. The watch changes. First Officer William Murdoch relieves Lightoller on the bridge. Up in the crow's nest, lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee begin their shift. They've been told to watch for small ice. The night is moonless. The sea is perfectly still, not a single wave. This is the worst possible condition for spotting icebergs because there's no water breaking against their base. And the lookouts have no binoculars. An officer named David Blair had been reassigned from the ship at the last minute, and in the shuffle, the key to the locker containing the crow's nest binoculars was never handed over. Blair took the key with him when he left. 10:55 p.m. The nearby Californian, a small cargo ship, radios the Titanic. The message is blunt. "Say, old man, we are stopped and surrounded by ice." Phillips, exhausted and irritated, cuts them off. His response, "Shut up, shut up. I am busy. I am working Cape Race." 11 p.m. Most passengers have retired to their cabins. In the first-class smoking room, the men from the Widener dinner party are still talking and playing cards. They have no idea that the ship is now inside an ice field that stretches for miles in every direction. 11:30 p.m. On the Californian, the wireless operator gives up trying to make contact. He turns off his radio and goes to bed. There is now no one listening. 11:39 p.m. Frederick Fleet, staring into the black from the crow's nest with nothing but his naked eyes, sees something. A dark mass, growing larger, fast. He strikes the bell 3 times and grabs the telephone to the bridge. Sixth Officer Moody answers,
"What did you see?"
"Iceberg, right ahead."
Moody relays the warning to First Officer Murdoch. Murdoch orders harder starboard and reverses the engines. The Titanic begins to turn, but she is 882 feet long, traveling at 22 knots. 37 seconds pass between the sighting and impact. It's not enough. 11:40 p.m. The starboard side of the Titanic scrapes along the iceberg. Most passengers barely feel it. One crew member later compares the sound to the tearing of fabric. Chunks of ice tumble onto the forward well deck. A few third-class passengers pick up pieces and start a snowball fight. Captain Smith is on the bridge within minutes. Murdoch tells him they've struck an iceberg. Smith summons Thomas Andrews, the 39-year-old shipbuilder who designed the Titanic. Andrews had been in his stateroom, making notes about cosmetic changes he wanted to make to the ship. Together, Smith and Andrews go below. What they find is catastrophic. The mailroom is flooding. The squash court is underwater. Boiler room 6 is filling fast. 14 feet of water already. 5 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments are breached. The Titanic was built to float with 4 compartments flooded, not 5. Andrews does the math. He tells Captain Smith the answer. The ship has roughly an hour to an hour and a half. It is, he says, a mathematical certainty. Smith now knows 3 things. His ship is going to sink. He has 2,200 people on board, and he has 20 lifeboats with room for only 1,178. Over 1,000 people on this ship have no way off. 12 a.m., April 15th, 25. Smith orders the lifeboats uncovered. The order is given. And gives the wireless operators and children a command. First. Send the distress signal. Many passengers taps out the first don't believe the ship is actually sinking. Old distress call. The Titanic is listing. Then Harold Bride suggests the lights are on. Send the band is playing. SOS. And the deck still feels solid underfoot. It may be some women last chance to leave their husbands. Some passengers think the lifeboats look more dangerous than the ship. 12:45 a.m. Lifeboat 7, the first to launch, is lowered with only 27 people on board. It has room for 65. This will be the pattern all night. Boat after boat launched half empty because the crew fears the davits can't hold a full load and because passengers won't leave. The Titanic fires the first of 8 distress rockets into the sky. On the horizon, the Californian's crew sees them. They note the rockets, but do nothing. Their wireless operator is asleep. 1:15 a.m. The water reaches E-deck. The bow is visibly sinking. The tilt of the deck is now unmistakable. Panic begins to spread. 5th Officer Harold Lowe fires his gun 3 times into the air to keep order as passengers rush the boats. 1:40 a.m. Most of the lifeboats are gone. The band, led by violinist Wallace Hartley, has moved outside to the deck. They keep playing. None of the 8 musicians will survive. 2:05 a.m. The last lifeboat is launched. Over 1,500 people remain on the ship. Thomas Andrews is seen standing alone in the first-class smoking room, arms folded, staring at a painting above the fireplace. His life jacket lies on a nearby table, unused. A steward asks him if he's going to try to save himself. Andrews doesn't answer. 2:18 a.m. The Titanic's lights flicker and go out. The stern rises high into the air. The enormous stress snaps the ship in 2 between the 3rd and 4th funnels. The bow section plunges to the ocean floor. The stern hangs vertically for a moment, then follows. 2:20 a.m. The RMS Titanic disappears beneath the surface of the North Atlantic. The water temperature is 28 degrees Fahrenheit. The people in the water are dead within minutes. 58 miles away, the Carpathia, under Captain Arthur Rostron, is racing through the dark at a record 17.5 knots, dodging icebergs with extra lookouts posted on every deck. Rostron had been asleep when his wireless operator, still wearing his headphones while undressing for bed, caught the distress signal. The Carpathia arrives at 4:10 a.m. In the grey morning light, the crew begins pulling survivors from scattered lifeboats. They find 710 people alive. The Californian, the ship that had been just 5 to 12 miles away, the ship whose crew watched the rockets go up and did nothing, doesn't learn about the sinking until 5:30 a.m. By the time she arrives, there is no one left to save. When the Carpathia reaches New York on April 18th, over 40,000 people line the docks. The disaster leads to sweeping changes in maritime law. In 1914, the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea requires enough lifeboats for every person aboard, mandatory lifeboat drills, and 24-hour wireless operation. The International Ice Patrol is established to monitor icebergs in the Atlantic. It still operates today. Here's what's hard to sit with. No single person sank the Titanic. There was no villain. There was a captain who trusted his experience, a wireless operator who was too busy to deliver a message, an officer who took a key with him and forgot, a lookout with no binoculars on a moonless night, a nearby ship whose radio operator went to bed 30 minutes too early. Every one of those decisions made sense in the moment, and together they killed 1,500 people. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and I'd genuinely love to hear your answer in the comments. If you could go back and change just one decision from that day, just one, which one do you think would have saved the most lives? Thanks for watching. If this is your first time here, this channel covers the final hours before the moments that changed history. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one.